Back to Westchester Country Club in Harrison, New York for more of the CN.
She appeared.
Annuals may be planted.
Hey everybody, we're back. Folks, here to perform a song from their debut album, Then Again, Maybe I Won't, is Johnny Bravo.
October 9th, 1969. Bernard and Wendy Landcourt have just given birth to a pair of twin boys who they've named Ansley and Branwen. The twins were born in Paris, France, the home of their father, but shortly thereafter, at the age of 6, moved to Piermont, New York, the birthplace of their mother. They believe that one of the reasons for this was due to the fact that their mother didn't speak much French, as well as the fact that she didn't want her children to grow up bilingual, thinking it was a bad thing at the time.
We had a very small family. Parents and grandparents. You ever hear the old Victorian-era expression, kids are meant to be seen but not heard? Gen X kids weren't even meant to be seen. There was literally a public service announcement that ran every night before the late news that said, "It's 10 p.m. Do you know where your children are?" Parents didn't know.
In their school lives, the boys were practically social outcasts, being bullied relentlessly due to a combination of originally being from France, as well as being a couple of nerds, being more interested in things like movies, reading, and above all, music. The two boys' early childhood was defined by music, whether it be listening to the AM radio or listening to the records that were constantly being played in the home by their parents.
They love music, and had no problem ever with anything new. My mother still keeps up. She knows more about modern music and artists than I do.
At this point in their lives, they were well invested in the stylings of the Rolling Stones, Jim Croce, Elton John, Carole King, The Who, The Carpenters, and many, many more. Their father's taste in French music and artists like
Tino Rossi, Jacques Brel, Charles Aznavour, and Georges Guettari
would also grow to be an influence in their tastes, but above all, the band that was the reigning force to them, the ones that they idolized above all else, was the Beatles. Later on, in their teen years, another band, Nirvana, would champion on the podium of greats in their eyes, as well as many teenagers in that period and beyond. But even then, the Beatles, and especially John Lennon, remained at that gold medal winning spot. One day, when they were at the age of 7, Ansley and Bran were hanging around at a friend's house, and she happened to have a guitar laying around in her room. This would lead Ansley to later approach his mother and ask if she had a guitar. He knew that his mother used to play them folk songs when they were young. She gave Ansley the guitar and would quickly teach him 3 simple chords: D major, A major, and E major, as well as an accompanying song to go along with the chords. Ansley picked up very quickly, and almost immediately went to show Bran, barging into his room and saying, "I know how to play guitar." Hearing his brother play those 3 chords, Bran also wanted to learn. They had learned some basic piano a couple years prior from their father, which may have helped them with the speed of learning and the idea of playing an instrument, but as soon as he laid his fingers on the fretboard, it felt natural. Same as Ansley. Soon after, the boys became obsessed with playing the guitar, trying to learn as much as they could, continuing to listen to records, reading a Beatles songbook they had that had all the chord structures, and soon enough, learning how to construct songs of their own. The boys almost immediately wanted to start a band of their own, starting their first act at the mere age of 9 or 10 with another kid from their elementary school, where they recorded a few Beatles-inspired songs under the name The Frenchies. At the age of 15, while the boys were still in high school, they formed their first official band called Reverend Heidnick's Basement, which was a short-lived hardcore band named after the American murderer, with drummer Andy Buglione and a singer named Brian Kopak, who later went on to work with Jello Biafra and the Dead Kennedys. They would perform as this band for only a short period of time, but it would give them their first taste of really being in a band. However, this band is only a mere footnote compared to their next big band, which would form in 1988 after the boys had graduated from high school and had just started college, when Bran and Ansley formed a band that they called the Good Fall. The first incarnation of the Good Fall was the Landcourts and a couple unnamed characters, a guitarist and a drummer they had met in college who were a pair of major stoners, as well as best friends, despite constantly fighting. Soon after they formed, they started to get some recognition, and were very quickly playing regularly at local Rockland venues, usually on new wave, indie, or goth nights, before terms like alternative or grunge were even in the popular zeitgeist. The guitarist's stepfather had an in with Atlantic Records, and they could have very well had a shot at a deal even then, but those two friends just couldn't keep it together, constantly fighting all the time. Somewhat due to this, so soon after forming, they disbanded, to which Ansley and Brand would go on to take a hard left turn and play in a prog rock band for a short period of time, called Spire Cranes. While in Spire Cranes, they were living in a cabin in the middle of the woods in upstate New York, with all different kinds of weird and seedy people, and were playing really weird, small, and unknown shows, like People's Sheds and Woodstock 89.
It was hilarious because I think 5 years later it was a big deal. They did, the Green Day was there, and it was like a big Woodstock thing. But when we went up there 5 years before to play, it was just it appeared to us like a bunch of pathetic hippies, and they were just like, "Oh man, everybody, it's happening again, man!" You know, like literally like out of that movie Woodstock.
Spire Cranes fell apart a while after this. That's when the boys decided to finally get their shit together and bring back the Good Fall, but now with a very new, very good drummer by the name of Craig Rogers, whom they met through their friend Kevin Lacey after Craig left his band. In early September of 1991, within less than a year of being back as the Good Fall, the trio got hooked up with Kevin Lacey to record their first demo tape, Let the River Answer, in Kevin's basement studio in his parents' house with an 8-track reel-to-reel MTR and crappy microphones from Radio Shack, finishing basic recordings for all 15 tracks in just less than 10 hours over the course of 4 days. Soon after this, in late 91, early 92, the band would add another phenomenal musician in the band in the form of a saxophone player by the name of Bruce Williams. Bruce, on his own, would later go on to become a very respected jazz saxophonist, coaching at Juilliard, working with many jazz musicians, and releasing several albums on his own. At this point, the band consisted of Ansley on guitar and vocals, Brand on bass, Bruce on saxophone, and Craig on drums, to which they would prove to be a powerhouse in both songwriting and performance. Around this time, Ansley and Brand's father started to get invested in them and their musicianship, and started helping them with booking gigs around the city in his spare time, as well as helping to promote their band in local magazines, like the Aquarian Weekly. Keep this in mind, this will be very important later. They were booking gigs left and right, and were quickly gaining popularity. And in 1992, they recorded their first professionally packaged album, called Picture Show, opting to switch from their initial sound engineer of Kevin Lacey, who was still an amateur engineer at the time, in favor of a brighter and funkier and cleaner mix, which they would find in a much more capable engineer in New Jersey by the name of Greg Morman.
That first album was a nice experience that went smoothly. He was good at what he did. He got decent sounds quickly, and we were well rehearsed.
The recording process was such a nice experience, in fact, that roughly 6 months later, in 1993, they decided to go back to record a batch of songs that would become their second album, Trouble and Desire. They ended up recording an album that still ages well, and got the twins their first ever piece of fan mail, from a girl saying their song, Will You Miss Me When I'm Gone, helped her get through her breakup, and thanking them for writing the song. When they went to record another album later that year, named Reliable Meat Market, they chose to go to a real professional studio in Hoboken, New Jersey, called Waterfront Studios, and also worked with Henry Hirsch, who helped to record Lenny Kravitz records. Later, for a short period of time, they would fill in as the backing band for their friend, Dave Copperman, who was recording a demo at Kevin Lacey's house, who had honed in his craft more in the years since the band's first demo. And after Dave's stuff was done, the Good Fall all of a sudden had the urge to record some of their own stuff they had been working on, resulting in the recording of their fourth and final album, titled The Christmas Monster, which transitioned the sound to be more rock-centered than jazz or funk like they had been doing in the years before. The sessions for this album were filled with fun and laughs all around for the band. Soon after the recording of this album, Craig Rogers would leave the band abruptly, without any warning. Craig had been with the band for almost 3 years at that point, and was living at the Landcourt's home in Piermont for almost as long.
I was in the unique position of hearing both sides of the story about him after he left the Good Fall. I was friends with both Ansley and Brand and Craig. He had just started a job as an auto mechanic next door to my day job's office. He called me the day after he left the Landcourts, and I remember asking him, "Are you sure this is what you want?" "Yeah," he replied. After a short pause, I vividly remember saying to Craig, "No offense, but I hope you haven't just made the biggest mistake of your life."
He told Kevin that he didn't want to play the drums anymore, and that he wanted to be a mechanic. This later proved to be untrue, as less than a year after leaving the Good Fall, he was playing drums again with another band. The Landcourts, now without a drummer, and with Bruce having already left long ago, knew that they needed to reset. It was soon after this that a kid from the Aquarian Weekly, "I told you it'd be important," would let them know of a drummer whose band had recently broke up, who had shown some interest in them. Just as a small note, this chapter will be quite short, as I couldn't get in contact with the person it's about, so it's all secondhand info in short, disconnected bursts. Matthew Fass was born on December 12, 1972, in Spring Valley, New York, to a family of his mother Marilyn, his father Robert, and his younger sister Deb. At the age of 13, Matt started taking lessons to learn how to play drums, and only a year later, he joined his first band at only the age of 14 by the name of Black Magic. Black Magic was comprised of his high school friends, with Dave Glick on bass, Brian Berkowitz and Dave Drescher, aka Virgil, on guitars, and Jason Hanley on vocals. On March 1st, 1985, Black Magic performed its first and only live show at their local teen center, performing covers of Ozzy Osbourne, Iron Maiden, and Ronnie James Dio, as well as an original song called Death to All Who Don't Rock. The band only lasted for one show, but it still left its mark in Matt's growing mind. Later on in that year, in late spring, early summer, Matt would join his first ever real band, with Brian from Black Magic, as well as a couple young chaps named Adam Bronner, Zach, and Karina, called Electric Sin. The group got somewhat popular before breaking up temporarily in late 88, early 89, before reforming soon after under the new name of Gin Jip.
Outdated racial term for people of Romani descent, which, at the time was not considered as bad of a word, so there is a level of plausible deniability, and even now, the term isn't really known for its hateful origins in most of the West, mostly due to its association with simple witchcraft and black magic, which have controversial histories in their own right, but I'm not gonna get into that right now.
A while after reforming, quickly gaining popularity in the Rockland area, and changing members around a few times, the band got signed to A&M Records and started recording their debut studio album at Ardent Studios in Memphis, Tennessee in late 1992. However, soon after the record got finished, the band's A&R guy got fired, leading to the record being shelved, never getting an official release. Soon after, in part due to this, the band would once again break up, in late 93, early 94. Now without a band, Matt began looking for musicians to partner up with, when he came across a band in the Aquarian Weekly called The Good Fall. After hearing of the band's breakup, he was able to eventually get in contact with the Landcourt twins after being recommended to them as a replacement drummer from a guy at the Aquarian Weekly who knew of Matt and of Matt's band, as well as his recent departure from it. Matt and the Landcourts first met up in March of 94 and almost immediately got to work, renting a rehearsal space in the back of a car dealership in a shady part of Rockland County, and started writing new songs, learning some old ones, and perfecting their new sound. They soon started performing again, with the lineup now being Ansley on guitar and vocals, Brandon on bass and backup vocals, and Matt on drums, and occasionally vocals. One night, after performing in a bar in New York City, the three ran into Kevin Lacey, who had recorded the first and last Good Fall demos, and the three began talking. Soon, the conversation shifted to the idea of recording a new demo tape, and in April, those plans would come to fruition.
I expressed my doubts to Ansley about Matt, because I felt he underplayed, but Ansley assured me that everything was sounding great. He was right, of course. It never occurred to me that Craig was actually overplaying. I think Matt is a more intelligent drummer than Craig, because he knows when to lean in and when to lay back. Even when he's laying back, though, he's still hitting hard as hell. His dynamic style of playing wound up putting a much greater spotlight on the twins' music, especially the lyrics.
In early April, the three came to Kevin's basement studio and recorded a total of 21 tracks, with 4 of those songs originally coming from The Good Fall, but now with a more rock-heavy twist. By the end of the month, after recording and mixing was done, and after slightly trimming down the track list, the band had their first ever 4-song demo tape. At this point, the band was still going by The Good Fall, but they wanted to start from scratch with something fresh, something memorable, something that would stick. And after brainstorming a bit, they came up with the perfect name, Johnny Bug. Now, under the Bug name, the three would begin performing more and more often, playing out once a week. With that comes practicing more and more often, practicing 2 to 3 hours a day, which, in turn, led to an uptick in quality. By the time they had recorded and started handing off copies of their demo tape at live shows, they had already begun perfecting their sound, less than a couple months into performing with each other. With this uptick in quality, they began writing more and more songs at a breakneck speed, eventually deciding to record another demo with Kevin in mid-July titled Dead Blue Mustang, named after the guitar that Ansley played during this time. Soon after this, the band would find out that there was already another local band called Bug, which meant that they would need to change their name. They began workshopping names between each other, with an alternative being Splinters, but they decided on another name that they thought would fit them a lot better.
Name of our band is Johnny Bravo.
A small thing of note was that this was in the summer of '94, a whole 3 years before the much more popular cartoon, Johnny Bravo, would be released. So, where did the name come from? Well, it was a mix of things. The biggest inspiration was actually the Brady Bunch, which is where the cartoon got its name as well. In the 1973 Season 5 episode, Adios Johnny Bravo, the character of Greg Brady gets signed by a talent agent to perform his songs under the new name of Johnny Bravo, but in turn, he needs to abandon his family act. At the end, he finds out that the only reason why they wanted him specifically was because the suit they gave him only fit him, leading to him tearing up his contract and going back to his family. The second inspiration for the name was a song from Dead Blue Mustang, which was titled Johnny Bravo Rides Again, or alternatively, Johnny Bravo is Dead, which was a song vaguely about the death of Kurt Cobain in a satiric kind of way. Also, Ansley had a shirt that said Johnny Bravo is God on it, so it seemed fitting. Under the new Johnny Bravo name, they would continue performing and writing very often, and in October, the three would go back to Kevin Lacey again to record another demo, titled The Used to Be Cool EP, or alternatively, The Kennedy Sessions, and they would also record another demo in December. In '94 and '95, Ansley would meet another local guitarist by the name of Tammy Lynn, who was a friend of Matt's and was playing in a band called Battershell. Ansley and Tammy Lynn would soon begin dating, and Ansley would begin to influence the way she would write her songs. Ansley would also soon decide to fill in for the band as a bassist, with Matt already sitting in as a drummer. The band would perform with this lineup for a while, record a few demos, and they'd end up recording a 4-song EP in '95 titled Beautiful Princess of Spit. Ansley and Matt would stay in this band for a little bit longer, but would leave soon after, being replaced by Hannah Moorhead and Charlie Louth on bass and drums respectively. For the band's 1996 album, Sunshine in Popopia, they would record a music video for their song Lavender Moses, which was co-written by Ansley, where the three Johnny Bravo guys would make appearances in, riding in a truck with Tammy Lynn. At some unknown time in '94, Johnny Bravo would take 7 tracks from their previous recording sessions and compile them into a tape called the Asthma EP, and they began sending it out to different places, hoping to get signed by somewhere, or just hoping to get recognition from people. A copy of this cassette would end up in the hands of Alan Vega from the band Suicide, while he was at a wedding. The story goes that Alan listened to the tape and loved it so much that he showed it to a friend, saying he should produce the band. His friend was a Mr. Rick Ocasek. Alright, before I head forward, I think it's important to explain who Rick Ocasek is, for those unaware, and why he's important. Richard Theodore Ocasek, alternatively known as Rick Ocasek, was born on March 23, 1944, in Baltimore, Maryland, to a Polish Catholic family. Rick wasn't exactly the most well-behaved child, being expelled from school when he was only in 5th grade. By the time he was a teenager, it was common that he'd spend weeks away from home, in the nearby town of Ocean City. Rick and his family later relocated to Cleveland, Ohio in 1960, when Rick was 16, where his father worked as a computer systems analyst for NASA. By this time, Rick had cleaned up his act a little bit in school, hoping to get into a good college by the time he'd graduate. It was around this time that Rick would also become interested in the arts, gaining an interest in photography, as well as building his own radio transmitters. After he graduated, Rick bounced around a couple different colleges and universities before deciding to drop out, as he had grown a fascination with musicians like Bob Dylan and Lou Reed, and realized that he wanted to be a musician, writing his own songs and picking up the guitar. Ocasek would join a band in 1967 called ID Nirvana, with a co-worker of his at the time, playing gigs around Cleveland and Columbus. And soon, he would meet a man by the name of Benjamin Orzechowski, who would end up being a longtime friend and writing partner of his. Ben was a co-worker of Rick's, and one day he came over to see Rick's band. He told Rick that he could sing, and later came over to his house, and sang a cover of the Beatles' Yesterday. Rick thought he had the sweetest voice he'd ever heard, and the next day, Benjamin was in the band. After performing under the ID Nirvana band for a bit, Orrin Ocasek would leave Cleveland for Boston, Massachusetts, where they formed a folk band called Milkwood, putting out their first and only record under this band in 1972 titled How's the Weather. Orrin Ocasek would play in a few more bands after this, namely Captain Swing, which consisted of Rick and Benjamin, as well as Elliot Easton, who was a guitarist who greatly helped develop the band's sound, as well as a couple other musicians. The band would gain a small following in Boston before getting their music played on WBCN radio, which was one of the biggest rock stations in the country at the time. But after doing a record showcase for record executives in New York, they were turned away for being too all over the place with both their sound and their image. With this, they decided to get their act together. and downsized the band to just Orr, Ocasek, Easton, as well as Greg Hawkes, who they had met as a session keyboardist in Milkwood, and local veteran drummer David Robinson. In the fall of 1976, the five of them would begin writing and putting together songs in Rick's basement, and after writing a fantastic list of songs, they decided that, record deal or not, they would put these songs out. And soon, after gaining immense popularity, not just by the fans, but by radio stations and radio companies, their band, The Cars, would put out their debut self-titled album in June of 1978 under Elektra Records. The album, and its accompanying single, Just What I Needed, became an almost instant classic, going platinum 6 times, selling over 1 million copies in just a year of the album's release, and 3 of the tracks being put on the Billboard Top 100. This is the band's first album, by the way. I can guarantee you, if you're interested in music from the 70s, 80s at all, you've most likely heard a song from The Cars, whether it be My Best Friend's Girl, Shake It Up, Just What I Needed, Magic, or many, many others. Benjamin Orr died in October of 2000 at the age of 53 due to complications with pancreatic cancer. And in 2018, after releasing 7 studio albums, the band was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Rick Ocasek died in 2019 due to natural causes, both him and Orr leaving behind legacies that surpass what most can even hope to achieve. The story goes that, after listening to Johnny Bravo's demo tape, Rick showed it to his wife, Paulina Porishkova, who enthusiastically said that he needed to produce the band. He agreed with her, but the only problem was that they were just about to leave on vacation. Rick asked Paulina if he should contact them before or after they leave, to which she said that he has to call them right away. So, one day in January of '95, out of the blue, the three got a call from Rick Ocasek. Needless to say, they were starstruck. Rick and the three were on the phone for hours, and they would often call after that. He would even end up calling them when he eventually went on vacation. When Rick and Paulina arrived back home, Ansley, Bran, and Matt would finally get to meet Rick at his Manhattan home, where they played him all the songs they had recorded up to that point, and together, they started putting together a track list for a potential album.
Am I rolling?
Yes.
Yes.
You're fucking rolling!
You sure in that beginning? No. I have to wait for 10 years.
Through Rick, the band was signed to Maverick Records, which was Madonna's record label, and in March of 1995, after hours and hours of track listing, practicing, and perfecting, they finally began recording their debut studio album at Electric Lady Studios in New York City. And the sound engineer for the album would be... not Kevin Lacey? Oh man, I was really starting to like that guy. As a sound engineer for the album, they had a man named Bruce Calder, with assistant engineers Andy Salas, John Seymour, and Rich Clark. The recording process under Rick as producer was a lot different than under Kevin, like they were used to at this point. Rick had them play super specifically, making them use special tuners to make sure that everything sounded perfectly in tune, and making Matt play to a click track, which he had never done before, and he hated doing. From March through May, the three would record 17 tracks, with most of the recording process being spent on guitars and overdubs, but they were only given roughly 2 days to record vocals. Their manager at the time was a Mr. Jeff Kramer, whom they met through Rick, and was the manager for Bob Dylan at the time. This is an unrelated side note, but this is the only footage I could find of this guy, and it's him in court for accused plagiarism under Bob Dylan. And then I looked into the account who posted the video, and it's just all this stuff. Like, this guy's been posting this stuff for like 14 years straight, and is still going. I don't know, I just thought it was like a funny, weird anecdote. Anyway, one day in May of '95, Jeff comes in and tells the three out of the blue that they are leaving Maverick, due to the fact that at the same time as them, Alanis Morissette was recording her album, Jagged Little Pill, an album that was praised by critics at the time, leaving Johnny Bravo without any attention from the label. Now, due to this, Johnny Bravo had an album with no label and no one to release it, and they were temporarily stuck in a limbo regarding the state of things. In the time off, the three went back to Kevin Lacey. To record some songs they'd been writing in the meantime, under the title of After School Special.
Bran tells me that they're all going through studio withdrawal. They have 30 plus new songs that they want to get on tape. This is one of the aspects of the twins that never cease to amaze me. The prolific amount of material that they can write in so little time.
After a couple of months, the three get told that they have 2 choices of record labels to go to next. Columbia Records and Arista Records. At first, the obvious pick between them seemed to be Columbia Records, but the people at Columbia were saying that they should completely re-record the album that was already almost finished, and record completely different songs to be more commercial. And after a conversation with the A&R people at Arista, they were told that they wouldn't need to re-record the album, and that Johnny Bravo would be pampered, would get special treatment as the label's only rock band at the time. With their decisions now swayed, they signed to Arista Records. At the time, Arista was a mainly pop and R&B label, hosting people like Whitney Houston, Sarah McLachlan, TLC, Ace of Base. So, not exactly the type of label you'd expect a rock band like Johnny Bravo to join. But hey, at the same time, they had a couple rock bands like the Bogmen and Fishbone. And Fishbone kicks ass, so obviously they'd be in good hands, right? Under Arista, the band could finally continue work on their album. And soon, after being signed to Arista, they were approached by an upcoming cartoon to do some work for it.
When we were signed to Arista, the Cartoon Network or whatever it was, came to Arista and said, "Oh, you have a band, Johnny Bravo. We're going to do this cartoon next year called Johnny Bravo. Can they write the theme song?" And we said no, like morons. It only went on to become like this big cartoon that we would have actually made some money if we had done it. But we had like a punk ethos or integrity that we were like, oh no, we don't want to be attached to some stupid TV show thing. It's one of the many horrible mistakes that we made in our career.
And later on after that, they were approached again to have their song in a movie.
The Brady Bunch movie came again, which they came to us again and said, "Oh, we want to use your song in the Brady Bunch movie," and we were like, "No, we don't want to be associated with the Brady Bunch," which we again lost money on that just for our stupidity.
In early January of '96, they went back to Electric Lady to record and mix 2 more tracks. On January 6th, at roughly 7 to 8 p.m., while everybody was still in the studio in New York City, they suddenly got a call from Jeff Kramer. When they pick up the phone, Jeff tells them,
"I'm in Boston with George Harrison, and he wants to meet you. Can you get up to Boston right now?"
Earlier, in the previous year, after the Johnny Bravo guys first met Jeff Kramer, he left New York and headed back to California, where he started showing off one of the band's tapes to people, with one of those people being George Harrison of the Beatles. He in particular liked their track, Elvis is Camping Out in My Backyard. Flashing back to the 6th, the 3 of them are in shock. Jeff tells them,
"By the time you get here, it'll be 12 o'clock to 1 a.m., and we'll have all night into the morning to hang out. We're waiting."
This is the band's one and only chance to meet a Beatle, to meet one of their biggest idols and inspirations. This is their one shot. There's just one small problem.
The metro area is crippled, bearing the burden of almost 2 feet of snow.
Well, the snow piled up in record numbers, trapping most people at home, and for those who did have to go outdoors, the going was really tough today.
Right now, we have 1,520 plows out. They've been out throughout the evening into the early morning.
Governor Pataki is asking you to stay home if you can possibly do that.
From January 6th to January 10th of 1996, New York and most of the United States East Coast would experience a historic blizzard known now as the Blizzard of '96, dropping 15 to 25 inches of snow and experiencing up to 50-mile-per-hour gusts of wind. In total, 154 people died on the East Coast, plus 33 due to flooding after the blizzard, and roughly $3 billion worth of damage was done to the East Coast. The 3 can see the snow pile and pile outside of the studio, and they can see on the news that it's just going to get worse, and they know that there is no way that they're getting from the city to Boston to meet George Harrison. Now, stranded in the studio, all they can do is continue to work on the album, listening to the same 2 songs over and over and over again until the mix is just right.
What do you mean you don't like you, fuck?
With this air of depression just reigning over them. They couldn't even play their instruments to pass the time because they had all been locked up. While all this was going on, they still had to finalize some stuff for the album, like final track listings and, most importantly, the title. After some discussion, they decided that the title of the album would be called Then Again, Maybe I Won't, named after the 1971 Judy Blume novel of the same name.
Gen X has a fetish for nostalgia. For the most part, they still do if you see anyone from that generation on Instagram. They're always twatting on about how great it all was, but frankly, that shit sickens me now.
They were able to slightly lighten up the mood as time passed, with Rick being as comedically charming as ever.
He was funny, so he would use humor to screw with us. But like if we would say, "Oh, can we put strings on this, or maybe do this thing," and he said, "Yeah, that's a great idea if you want to fuck up your record." stuff like that. So,
And so, yeah, it's great if you wanted to suck.
yeah, it's great if you wanted to suck.
The last mix in the car we just did,
Yeah,
it sucks so bad you can't use it on the record.
really?
No.
So how can you fix it?
By taking your bass part off and your vocal, that would make it a winner.
When mixing was finally done for the night at roughly 10 p.m., the three, with Rich Clark, headed out into the snow and back to their hotel for the night.
Doesn't get much better than this. Schaefer City. Ham and cheese all around.
We just finished the best album to come out in years, and we're treated to a nice potato chip and shit on a bun.
Yeah.
It's Miller time. Stranded in New York City. Blizzard of 96. The blizzard of 96.
On the 8th, the three met up with Kurt St. Thomas, who was one of the A&R guys for the album, to discuss things like album art, photography, the band's logo, etc., while also annoying him with their camera.
I know that the red light's on, but you're wasting tape.
He's got-
I come all the way over here in the blizzard of 96. You're just gonna leave it? Turn it off!
What?
Turn it off!
What?
Turn it off!
What?
Fucking turn it off.
Hold on, get that fucking tape recorder. What is this?
They also finalized the final track listing, coming out with a total of 12 tracks plus a bonus track, cutting down from the previous 17 recorded tracks. Through the next few months, they would begin finalizing things about the album. The majority of copies would be printed on CDs, which was common at the time, but Ansley and Brand pushed for LPs to be made, being major vinyl collectors. As for bonuses to the album, they would make a couple singles, and plenty of posters, stickers, and even a Mad Lib style book called Bravo Blurbs, once again adding to the Gen X nostalgia fetish. On Sunday, April 7th, 1996, Johnny Bravo made its debut on the radio at 11:32 p.m. on 92.7 WDRE, the #1 alternative radio station in the New York metropolitan area. Kevin Lacey recorded the entire thing and listened to it with Ansley over the phone later that night.
As I was listening to the DJ say, Johnny Bravo grew up in the 80s. I guess that's all he can manage to say. I said to Ansley, little does that DJ know what he's just done. Ansley laughed and agreed.
By May, everything was finalized, and they just needed to push everything to the stores. Listening to the final mixes of the songs, although they felt they were okay, the three felt they were a bit sterile. Definitely a lot more sterile than the demos they made with Kevin. With the record's official release coming up, the three of them couldn't help but feel a sense of dread. Not just a normal sense of anxiety or pessimism, but a sinking feeling that all of this work wouldn't end up panning out well in the long run. But that's just gotta be the pessimism talking. Things will go well. Right?
Thank you, we're Johnny Bravo. And here's one you might recognize, so just listen.
Johnny Bravo's debut studio album, Then Again, Maybe I Won't, dropped on May 30th, 1996, and the day after, on May 31st, the three were slated to perform on nationwide network television for the first time on the Season 3 episode of Late Night with Conan O'Brien. The three of them were nervous, as could be expected, but what didn't help was that, as they were practicing, Ansley's guitar amp was on the fritz, making them feel like it was going to blow up in the middle of the set and ruin the whole thing. The three waited nervously backstage while the episode went on, with Conan interviewing such guests as Al Roker and Mark Lehner. Before they got on stage, Max Weinberg, who was the drummer for Conan's live band, and Bruce Springsteen, came up to them and, noticing how nervous they were, gave them a small piece of advice. Take the time to enjoy what's happening right now. Remember these moments. Being scared shitless, the three couldn't really focus on what he was saying, and soon enough, Conan introduced the band, and they began to perform their song, Used to Be Cool. Luckily enough for them, they performed well enough, and got a pretty good reaction from both the crowd and Conan himself, and Ansley's amp didn't keel over and die until a different live show that wasn't being nationally broadcast. Meanwhile, in the green room, Kevin Lacey, who was with him as a guitar tech, was talking with Max Weinberg, who said that he doesn't usually listen to the bands that play, but he checked out the album and really liked Johnny Bravo. Soon after this, the band went on tour through the Northeast to promote the album, doing live shows and going on radio stations. Helping with this tour was Rich Clark and also Kevin Lacey, as well as most likely some unnamed people.
You know, we went from city to city, and I didn't get paid, and there was no hotel room for me. I was sleeping on the floor, you know, in the rooms that they had, just so I could tag along, because I wanted to be there, you know. I wanted to be involved, you know, because I love them so much, and I love their music, and I just wanted to support in any way I could.
One of the first stops on this tour was in Providence, Rhode Island for 95.5 WBRU for their summer concert series on June 6th. During this tour, Kevin and Rich really butted heads, but it all came to a head one day after the band had just done a radio promo, and the engineer came up to Kevin and said that they had a DAT tape of the entire thing, and asking him where they should send it, to which Kevin immediately said to send it to him, because he had all the other archives of everything the band did. The next day, Rich caught wind of this, and he and Kevin got into a huge blowout fight, saying that Kevin was trying to steal from them, and that he was just a guest, and how dare he insert himself in that way. Kevin was completely taken aback by this, and Ansley and Brand were pretty non-confrontational, so eventually, Kevin just left, calling his ex-girlfriend and asking for a ride back to Rockland in the morning. Roughly a week passed by after the fight, and it's the last day of the tour, where the band will be performing in the Mercury Lounge in Manhattan. And suddenly, at roughly 8 a.m., Kevin gets a call from Ansley saying,
"So, we had a big problem with Rich, and he's off the tour, and we've got this last date today, and we have no help. Can you come down here and help us?"
After a minute of thinking, Kevin agreed to help him out, and went down to hang out behind the console, getting the engineer up to speed with the way they mix everything. After this tour, the band set out on another tour, not just through the Northeast this time, but through the country. Most of the year for the band was spent touring, performing, and going on radio stations. Arista hired a venue booker for $20, and he booked the band for every seedy place on their route.
Like, there was one time that we played, there was literally 0 people there. It was a college town, and Albany, and nobody was there. They all gone home for summer break, and nobody was there. And we literally played to the sound guy.
However, that doesn't mean there weren't good shows too. In November, during the southwestern leg of their tour, through a biz lifer named Lon Friend, they were given the opportunity to open for Kiss. And not only just Kiss, but they opened for Kiss's big Alive Worldwide tour, which featured founding members Peter Criss and Ace Frehley in their original makeup for the first time since 1979. Through November 5th to November 10th of 1996, Johnny Bravo would tour alongside and open for Kiss through Austin, Texas, Lafayette, Louisiana, Shreveport, Louisiana, Little Rock, Arkansas, and Dallas, Texas.
The energy from the audience, I mean, that when 50,000 people or whatever it is, 30,000 people are clapping towards you, the energy of love and expectation and admiration, and, you know, just all this strong emotional energy directed right at you. It blows your hair back. It blows your ears back. I mean, you really feel it like a punch in the chest. And then, of course, 3 seconds later, they realized that you're not Kiss. So it was like, then it would turn to like disappointment and consternation. And so what we'd ultimately wound up doing is that it was, all right, well, they're going to always be disappointed that it's not Kiss. So let's at least grab them with a song that they know. So we always open up with like a Zeppelin song. So at least they say, oh, all right, well, I guess they're playing Zeppelin. So I guess we can stand to listen to them for you know.
Yeah, we never got actively booed, but just very cold reception.
Yeah, we never got booed. Although a couple of people were there, like giving us the finger and saying "fuck you." I remember this one guy, I think in Dallas. This one guy in the front was so pissed off that we weren't Kiss that he was just like livid.
Now, did your parents tell you never to boo?
Through the tour, Johnny Bravo didn't really interact with Kiss until right before the last show they did, where Paul Stanley and Gene Simmons opened their dressing room door, stood in the doorway, shook their hands, and said to them,
"Hey man, just don't feel bad that we didn't talk to you or see you or anything like that. But even in the 70s, man, we didn't talk to our opening acts."
They were able to see the band in person during rehearsals and on stage though, and even saw them front row in Madison Square Garden in July before they went on tour with them. The band was also doing shows on the side, like opening for Archangels in El Paso, Texas. At some point in the year, they were given the opportunity to make a music video for their song Used to Be Cool, and when they got to choose the director, they chose to work with English director Sophie Moeller, because they loved her work as the director for So Real by Jeff Buckley and Cimarron by Come. When they first met her to begin workshopping ideas for the video, she started pitching her idea, and the three talked over her to pitch their own idea of them starting in a house shot with typical cameras used in 90s videos and end in this 70s type TV studio that had to be shot with old studio cameras. With them obviously wanting to go with their specific idea, she agreed, saying, "If it flops, you own it. If it's a success, I'm taking full credit." And they began shooting soon after, filming over the course of roughly a week, starting the video with them performing at their friend Eric Paparazzi's house, before moving with them to them performing on a 70s type soundstage in MTV Studios, complete with 70s studio cameras, charming visual effects, and Rich Clark. The video got played on 120 Minutes a couple times and ran on MTV2 a few times. Despite not getting too much response overall, the video still holds up pretty well. As for the response to the album, there was none. Although Arista used to have really popular bands and artists under their belt like The Kinks and The Grateful Dead, that was in the 60s and 70s. This was the 90s, and Arista had Sarah McLachlan, an ace of bass. And because of this, whenever they tried to get Johnny Bravo played on rock radio stations, the station would see Johnny Bravo from Arista Records, and they'd say, "Oh, that's the Ace of Bass label. I'm not playing that shit." Arista couldn't even bribe them. Because what are they going to say? "I'll give you 100 free tickets to Ace of Bass"? The minimum amount of radio ads that a band had to have to be a success was 25. Johnny Bravo got 10. This was the worst possible outcome for the band. The worst case scenario. All of their fears had come true. Because of all this, at the end of the year, they parted ways with Arista Records, along with many people working at Arista at the time. Now, the band was once again without a label, and had an album that flopped. Soon after, they began recording a second album that they planned on releasing once they got a new record label, which couldn't be that hard, right? At some point in 1996, they recorded their second album with Kevin Lacey, full of all the indie and eclectic songs they had written on tour and throughout the year. They recorded 40 tracks for it, a whole double album's worth of songs. The album's planned title was Comet in Bravo Land, but for one reason or another, they never released it, leaving it all to just collect dust. At some point between January and May of 1997, they would record a batch of songs with their friend Matt Caravalli, and these songs would end up being the last recordings of the band in this form, as soon after this, Matt Fass would leave the band. The Landcourts would try to keep going, recording a few songs with Charlie Louth from Battershell as a drummer, but as one final fuck you to them, Jeff Kramer, and Rick Ocasek got dragged into a lawsuit by a guy who claimed to be a former manager, and the entire lawsuit put them out of commission for nearly a year. Johnny Bravo is dead. In 1997, Brand auditioned to be the replacement bassist for Weezer, after their original bassist, Matt Sharp, decided on leaving the band. He did well, and the members of the band told him that they were just going to finish up a tour in Japan with Matt, and then they could discuss working together. But, due to a combination of many things, Weezer would end up going on a hiatus after this tour, not releasing another album until 2001, with Mikey Welsh on bass, not Bran. In 1998, the Landcourts started a new band called The Sons of Warren Oates, or alternatively, just The Sons. The Sons recorded some songs with their friend Dave Varioli on drums to shop around to record labels, as they still had management from Johnny Bravo to help them out. At the end of the year, they were able to get signed to Interscope Records, because one of their A&R guys, Steve Ralbovsky, now worked at Interscope after quitting Arista. In January of 1999, he told them, "Come back on Friday, and we'll plan our strategy." On Thursday, January 21st, 1999, a day referred to now in the industry as D-Day, there was a giant merger in the company, which led to 500 label staffers being fired, including Ralbovsky. And that was it. With him being fired, any business he had with the Sons was completely scrapped.
That was the last real shot we had in the biz. By this time, we were in our late 20s, which was apparently ancient. It was like the universe said, "You're done. This is not going to happen."
They continued playing around in different bands like Panda, Volcano, Copperman, and recording some stuff for the Sons in 2000, but in 2006, they officially gave up, hanging up their band outfits for good. In 2007, Ansley would begin dating a woman who would later become his now wife, and in 2011, their daughter, Silky Moon, would be born. Today, Ansley takes care of his family, paints, and occasionally still fiddles around with writing and recording music in his free time, but that's just out of a mixture of habit and nature. He's also made a couple of art books. Through the 2000s, Ansley and Brand would create comic strips together under their website, Walrus Comics. And they would both write and star in a short film directed by Dave Variali in 2007 called Falling Off the Table, which was somewhat of a mix between My Dinner with Andre and After Hours. Brand still occasionally makes music in his spare time, same as Ansley, and is currently engaged to his fiancée, Lauren, and they are planning on getting married in late June. Best of luck to both of them. Brand also wrote and released a book in 2015 titled Away in the Cowboy Field. As for Matt Fass, neither of the twins have seen him in person since 2003, where they spent the day with him. After leaving Johnny Bravo, Matt moved to California, where he got involved with the band Veruca Salt for a bit. Through the internet, he was able to make a bunch of money, becoming somewhat of an internet entrepreneur. And later, he bought up a bunch of real estate in Austin, Texas, way ahead of the curve, and he was able to make a lot more money. He wasn't just in it for the money, however. With the housing in Austin, he was able to provide people housing who couldn't afford it, and did a lot of pro bono work overall from what was heard and seen.
He's the type to always land on his feet. I wish him nothing but the best.
In the 2010s, he would get back into recording music, and in mid-2017, with the help of some friends, he would start putting out some music under the name Backyard Star. Backyard Star would put out a few singles and a couple albums, but there hasn't been anything new since 2019, which is kind of a shame because a lot of the stuff is actually really good power pop, and I'd honestly recommend it to anyone who likes that kind of stuff. But I know the question that everybody watching this is really asking. Where do you come from all this? Alright, I'll tell you. It was mid-August of 2025. I was just laying on my bed, scrolling social media, as you do, when suddenly, I came across this video on my For You page of this guy saying,
"Did you know that the 1997 Johnny Bravo TV show stole the name from the zero-hit wonder band from 1996?
Interest peaked.
So it turns out that both projects just had a mere coincidental name choice.
You lost me. Anyway, this guy was talking about some 90s band that I've never heard about. The music video looks alright. I'll check it out. I checked it out, listened to the song, and thought, it's alright. I'll add it to my playlist. Flash forward a few months and somehow we got here. I've gotten way too obsessed with this band to the point where I barely even remember how it happened. Is it my love for archival? Is it my love for music? Is it the autistic desire to learn more about an incredibly niche and specific but somewhat interesting topic? The jury's still out on that one, but they're theorizing that all three answers are actually one and the same. I got a car in January. You wanna know the only CD I've listened to in it so far?
Wouldn't you believe it's typical of me? Don't know why I even try. Don't know why I even try. Don't know. Get off the road, jackass!
I've put so much time, energy, and so much money into this band. Hell, I bought this demo tape for $90 and I didn't even mention it until just now. So, will I regret buying all this stuff in roughly 2 to 3 months? No. Because in my 19 years on this planet, I've yet to find the day where I regret spending a single cent on any of the artists I've supported. Mostly. In the only 3 years that Johnny Bravo was active, the three of them wrote at the very least 175 songs, with many more likely being undocumented or unaccounted for via my shitty math. For comparison, in the 8 years that they were active as the group we know them as, the Beatles wrote 214 songs, including covers, which is a shockingly close number for going on over twice as long. And barely anybody has heard any of Johnny Bravo's songs. Currently, you can listen to most Johnny Bravo tracks on Brandon Ansley's SoundCloud, Brandsley Music. It also has tons of stuff beyond Bravo, from before and after. You could also alternatively check out my account where I've organized everything into separate playlists if you don't feel like scrolling through it all, but all the streams and likes still go to them. Listen, I am not a spiritual man, nor am I a man of faith, but I just hope that some of the energy and effort that I've put out there is able to circle back around and support these artists who deserve it. May 30th marks the 30-year anniversary of Then Again Maybe I Won't's release. And I just hope that this documentary is able to shed some light onto this band that I care so much for. Before I end this off, I just want to say a quick few thanks to both Ansley and Brand Landcourt for taking the time out of their days to get on a nearly 3-hour call with me to discuss this band, and also sending me so many of the photos you've seen here, as well as this signed vinyl. They were both incredibly kind for agreeing to participate at all, and they just went above and beyond. I also want to say a thanks to Kevin Lacey for also getting on a call with me to discuss the band, and for sending me many more of the visuals you've seen here, as well as a complete spreadsheet of almost everything recorded from The Good Fall to The Suns. He was very kind as well, and during our call, I can tell that he was just very happy to help out in any way he could. I also just want to say a quick thanks to Matt Fass, because even though I wasn't able to get in contact, he was still an integral part to what made this band so great, and I wish him all the best. I wish everybody the best, including you watching this. Have a great day.
How's it feel to have a label that's behind you?
Oh, it feels great.
Isn't that cool?
I mean, we're so much luckier now.
Huh?
I mean, no, everybody's really nice too.
Yeah,
You know,
I mean, and they legitimately.
they take care of us.
They've already
You know,
sent out some stuff. Got good reaction.
yeah.
Enjoy the moments that you know, if you're passionate about something, enjoy the moments of being involved in that passion. If you're an artist and you're making art, enjoy the process of making art. You know, it's like because that's the most important thing anyway. Writing of the songs and the playing, that I always loved. I still love to play and I still love to write music. So that's always something that I'll always love.
I think art and love are the most important elements that of humanity.
I used to be cool till I got lost in you. I'm feeling so torn. I wish I